Hello everyone, Kenny McKeithen here, and this is part 2 of my Lightroom cropping tool video. If you watch part 1, you'll no doubt recognize the image in the center work area as the same image I worked on there. And I'm going to continue on and show you some of the additional features that you can find under the cropping tool. So I'm going to open the cropping tool, and you'll see the crop here just the way we left it at the end of part 1. The very first thing I'm going to do is reset that crop. Now, that's a wonderful feature, one of the beauties of working in Lightroom. You'll remember that Lightroom cannot do any harm to your images and works completely in metadata changes and metadata instructions. What that means is that I'm never fully committed to a crop. I can crop the image, I can use the cropped image any way that I want, but at any time I need to, I can always come back and click the small reset within the crop tool window and reset that crop to the way I started. Remember that that is only resetting the effect of the crop tool, not the full reset button down here, which resets everything that has been done to the image. In other words, the big reset button here takes everything back to the way the image came out of the camera. The smaller reset will only reset the effect of the cropping tool without affecting anything else I've done to the image. So I think that's a great way to work and a nice feature to have. One of the first things I want to show you is, if you remember from last time, we cropped by dragging the handles, either corner handles or side handles. Lightroom is by default set to crop to the 2:3 aspect ratio. Now, that aspect ratio is what all digital SLRs and most of the digital bridge cameras or ZLR cameras are putting out. That is an image that is 2 units tall by 3 units wide. And that's perfect if we want to put out a 4:6 image, 8:12, 16:24. Any of those sizes, the 2:3 aspect ratio works just fine. But what happens if you want to, say, print to an 8:10 or a size of that type? Something that doesn't match that 2:3 aspect ratio. I'll call your attention to the aspect ratio picker here within the cropping tool. You'll notice that right now it says original, and that is that 2:3 aspect ratio. If I pull that down, I do have a number of other aspect ratios that I can choose from. You'll also notice here I have 4:5 and 8:10 on the same line. That is because they are the same aspect ratio. If I click on that, watch what happens to the cropping window out here in the work area. You'll notice that it has reconfigured itself to match that 8:10 aspect ratio. If I pull the side handles or the corner handles in, you'll notice that now that aspect ratio is locked in and it will not change. As long as that padlock icon right here is locked, and you lock it and unlock it just by clicking on it, as long as it's locked, it will maintain whatever aspect ratio is listed here. If you ever unlock that padlock, then you are cropping in more or less a free crop mode where you can establish your own aspect ratio within that just by dragging the corner handles or side handles any way you want them. If you click an aspect ratio, and let's say we'll do a 5:7 this time, if I click on 5:7, you'll notice that the aspect ratio window here has, the cropping window has changed itself to the 5:7 aspect ratio. You'll also notice that by default that padlock icon is now locked. So anytime you pick anything from that list, the padlock icon automatically locks itself. Now, let's say we want to crop to an aspect ratio that is not on the list. Let's say I want to do an 11:14, and I've already put one in here, but I'll show you how I do that. All you do is click on Enter Custom and type in 11 and then 14, and click OK. And now the cropping window has reconfigured itself to the 11 by 14 crop. Now understand that at this point we really don't need to put in the final print size. We actually do that a little bit later on when we export an image. Right now all we need to do is put in the aspect ratio for that final print size. You put in a print size, it works, but it's not necessary to put in every single print size you're ever going to want to print. The aspect ratio will cover perhaps a number of different print sizes. Now, let's say we, along that same line, let's say we want to print a 16 by 20. Well, what happens when we enter 16 by 20 as an aspect ratio? 16 here, and then 20, and we'll click on OK. It turns out that Lightroom is smarter than that. It has reverted to the 4 by 5, 8 by 10 aspect ratio because it knows that 16 by 20 fits that 4 by 5, 8 by 10 aspect ratio, and it's not necessary to add it to the list. One other handy cropping aspect ratio here is the 1:1 crop, which is just a square crop. Again, don't think about this in terms of print size at this point. 1:1 crop could yield us a 5 by 5 print, 10 by 10, 20 by 20, whatever the final size is, as long as that final size fits within that 1:1 aspect ratio. Now, I'm going to reset the cropping box at this point, and I want to show you one other pretty handy tool within the cropping window. And that is the ability to easily level your horizons. And once again, you'll notice this image. I chose this image specifically because the horizon is not dead level. It is leaning just a little bit. And so there are a couple of ways to level that horizon. You'll notice if I hover outside any of the cropping handles, either the side handles or the corner handles, the cursor changes to that two-headed arrow. And if I click and drag at that point, you'll notice two things. First of all, you'll notice that I'm rotating the image within the cropping window. Second, you'll notice that the grid has tightened up a little bit from that rule of thirds grid to a little bit tighter grid here that I can use to help me with level and vertical lines, or horizontal and vertical lines. In this case, I have a line that is really close to that horizon, close enough, in fact, that I could certainly use it to help me level that horizon. So all I'm doing is kind of dragging back and forth here a little bit till I see that I have it level, and then let it go, and there I have a level horizon. Now, that is not the only way to level the horizon, and I don't think it's the easiest way to level the horizon. So let me show you this. I'm going to click Reset again, and I'm going to use the Angle tool right here. If I click the Angle tool on, you'll notice that the cursor has changed to a little bubble level cursor with a little crosshair in the upper left-hand corner. Now what I'm going to do is take that crosshair over to the left. Now I'm right-handed, so I work right to left. You can do this left to right. It works either way. I'm going to take that and put that cursor, that crosshair, right on the waterline. Give it a click and hold it as I drag out to the right. Now at this point, it doesn't matter, up, down, left, right, wherever I put this line until I let it go. So I'm going to drag it all the way over to the right-hand side here, and now I'm going to just kind of drag it up and down a little bit until I reach a point where I've covered that waterline and let it go. And you'll notice that the image snaps to a level horizon. All right, let me show you that one more time. I'm going to reset. I'm going to click the Angle tool. I'm going to take the cursor over and put it on the waterline, the X mark, crosshairs if you will. Put that on the waterline, give it a click and drag until I get all the way over to the right-hand side, and then I'm just going to move that line up and down until I have it level on the water, and then I'm going to let it go and it snaps to a level horizon. Now, I don't have a vertical line in this image, but trust me, that works just as well on vertical lines. Now that I have the horizon level, I can crop just like I normally would, side handles, corner handles, whatever I need, and it will maintain a level horizon until I change it. Once again, I'm going to reset to show you the next thing I want you to see, and that is how to change this overlay that is in the window here. By default, Lightroom is showing us a rule of thirds overlay, and there are some other options that you may want to explore. You can change the overlay by clicking the letter O on the keyboard. So as I press O on the keyboard, I change from the rule of thirds to angles, triangles, a tighter rule of thirds grid, which is known as the golden mean, and then we have the golden spiral, or what's known as the Fibonacci spiral. Look that one up. Continuing to click the O, I get an aspect ratio reminder. This is just to show me if I were to crop to one of those aspect ratios, what I would be gaining or losing. Press O one more time, and I get that really tight grid that we saw earlier when we were rotating the image, and then O one more time brings me back to the rule of thirds grid. Now, a couple of those overlays can be oriented to better match the picture they're over. So one, for instance, for example, is going to be that Fibonacci spiral, so I'm just going to scroll through to find it. And now I'm going to hold the Shift key and continue to click the O. So with the Shift key held down, you'll notice that I changed the orientation of that Fibonacci spiral. Now there are 8 different ways to lay it out to accommodate vertical or horizontal images. Now I passed the one that I wanted. Let's cycle back around to that one, since my main point of interest here is in the lower left corner, and you can see how I can use it now to put my image exactly in the area where I would like it to end up, just by using that spiral. One of the others that can be oriented is the triangles, and I'm going to hit O till I come around to the triangles, and that's a real simple left or right kind of orientation, but again, I'm holding the Shift key and clicking O, O, and I'm just flip-flopping those triangles back and forth. The last thing I want to show you is, let me get back to my rule of thirds grid. That's where I like to leave it. That's the default setting and the one I find the most useful. The last thing I want to show you is I get a question from time to time about how do I flip from, say in this case, a horizontal to a vertical crop. What if I've taken a vertical picture, in this case a horizontal picture, and I want to crop a vertical out of it? How do I do that? There are actually a couple of ways to do that. I think the easiest one is on your keyboard just to click the letter X. So X on the keyboard will flip the aspect ratio from the horizontal orientation to the vertical orientation, or if I started with a vertical, it would flip it the other way from vertical to horizontal. If I click X again, then you'll notice that it flips it right back to the horizontal again. The other way to do that is normally if you would grab one of the corner handles to crop an image, we normally drag that in on the diagonal. If instead of doing that, you grab the corner handle and drag it in straight, eventually it'll reach a point where it will just magically flip over to the other aspect ratio. And then, of course, as you saw, if I drag it back, oops, I'm rotating, sorry. If I drag it back, then it will reflip that orientation back to horizontal. So that, I think, confuses people. It confuses me. And so I don't think that's ultimately the best way to do that. I think the letter X on the keyboard is ultimately the best way to flip that. Once again, thank you for watching. Check out the website, kennymfoto.com, for all of my classes and workshops. Keep an eye out here for more YouTube videos that I'll be uploading shortly. And thank you for watching.